and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Security has been the word on the lips of everyone for a while now, from the president, who has expressed shock at the level of violent crimes in the country and has been quoted as saying, "What is happening now is surprising. It's not ethnicity or religion. Rather, it's one evil plan against the country." To the National Assembly, who's prioritized security since its resumption from recess, to the ordinary Nigerian, represented by the two major faiths in the country, Christianity and Islam. On Sunday, members of the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, staged a prayer walk to call attention to the matter, especially in the light of the recent brutal murder of some Christians. And on Wednesday, the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs asked the government to declare a state of emergency on security. What didn't we see coming? Are we misdiagnosing our security malaise? Are we on the track to solving it with the different measures we're putting in place? Or will it only worsen the matter? What are the international dimensions to the troubles we face? Well, Reverend Ladi Thompson, a pastor, security consultant, and special advisor to the president of CAN on Anti-terrorism and Conflict Resolution, is our guest tonight. Reverend Thompson, welcome to Hard Copy.
Pleasure is always mine.
Well, you have been on air several times to talk about this bothersome matter. You've said terrorism in Nigeria is not religious. You said what we're dealing with is a patient, lethal, and cruel supremacist ideology disguised as religion to tear us further apart. Now, in reading our responses to, over the years, because we've been on this matter since terrorism began, would you say that we now fully understand the problem, and are we, responding to it in the manner that we ought to?
Until a doctor has a proper diagnosis, he cannot make a prescription. And that's why you find out that all the good efforts have practically come to naught, frankly speaking. So we're now at a point where it's become obvious that we have to diagnose properly or else perish as a nation.
Yeah, the reason why I bring this to the fore is because the president's comment is very telling. When he says that when we were coming to office, we knew about Boko Haram, we knew about this, but banditry and the manner in which it's taken over the northwest of the country, which had seen relative peace before then. We saw the so-called farmers' herders crisis, and the dimensions that one took as well. A whole forest somewhere in Chikum local government area of Kaduna State is a no-go area, for our security forces. Until recently, the Nigeria police claimed they killed 250 people there. Mm-hmm. What precisely are we dealing with?
Let me use the example of the HIV virus. Mm-hmm. What the HIV does is that it disables the immune system of the body. And then afterwards, even the common cold could even kill a person. So all the banditry and all the stuff that you're looking at, most of it is opportunistic. The core problem is very simple. We're dealing with a very intelligent, extremely patient, global problem. It's a hydra, which means it has a face in government, it has a face in media, it has a face in finances, it has a face in religion, it has different faces, it's invested in practically all the molders of opinion in a society.
What exactly is the problem we're dealing with?
Well, let me borrow a leaf from after the 9/11 horror in the United States of America. They quickly went back to the drawing board and saw that they'd been careless not to diagnose earlier that there was actually a global narrative, a supremacist move, some people who have decided we can rule the world. And one of the best ways to do it is that we're going to take up the structure of multinationals. However, we wear a religious disguise. What the religious disguise does is that it collapses nations from within. Like Nigeria right now is, in fact, just a ripe nation. If we make it, the world will make it. It looks at Nigeria and realizes that, look, in its history, there are certain cracks and wide chasms that had been a part of Nigerian history. So it takes that opportunity to drive a wedge so that it now tries to make it look like a Christian and religious thing. Now, don't forget that many years earlier, I was on this same television station when they said, no, it's political. No, it's ethnic. No, it's cultural. Oh, it's all about land. And I said, no, it has a head in every single one. It's not just one, but it's all. put together. But the intelligence behind it is simply one thing: supremacist.
Are you talking about the Boko Haram crisis?
When we say it's a hydra,
Yes.
we don't want you. This is why I'm having a problem with Nigeria's approach to this whole thing. It's a hydra because the Boko Haram is just one head. Okay, that's like a cell structure that was designed to destabilize from within. But it's a shapeshifter. The moment the game turned and the Boko Haram was being downgraded, they went back to the drawing board. Which is why Nigeria doesn't understand that all the atrocities you're seeing Boko Haram doing right now is an appeal for funding. They've been defunded drastically from the global level. So they're having to find their own funding from within. And that's why now their kidnapping has increased and they're asking for huge sums of money and all that, because that's what keeps the operations going, while they prove to their global handlers that, look, we are still in reckoning. But the truth is that they're very barbaric, they're very crude. The investments that's put into them is not yielding much. But for the Fulani militia that are better trained, have an ancient narrative behind it, and have leadership skills within, and have a political savvy that can be exploited. The global intelligence is exploiting that within the nation. So if Nigeria is wise, we should stop looking at whether it's Boko Haram, whether it's Fulani, whether the real thing we need to look at is the ISWAP, because that's the closest thing we can hold on to. That's the Islamic States of West African province. And until Nigeria wakes up and says that, my God, this is the real enemy, it's global, but it has a local face. It can change its face, and it collapses nations from within. Once we realize that, we're going to find out that every nation of the world has 4 things that you use to battle it. Nigeria has only 1 out of the 4 in place.
Which is?
Well, every nation of the world realized that if they continue to use the traditional chain of command in the security services, in the army, and all that, it was never going to work, because we're dealing with asymmetrical warfare and hybrid threats. We're dealing with non-conventional warfare. You're dealing with a warfare that can use a pregnant woman to strap a bomb and approach the column of soldiers. So what you need to do is that all other nations that are very serious about this have changed the strategy, and then the chain of command is deconstructed and an adaptive form of command is put into place. Now, Nigeria has tried to do that. And I mean, I must tell you, we must commend our people for interagency collaboration. However, don't forget that the Army Chief of Staff shouted out a while ago that there's a war of narratives. So that only one thing is not going to win this war. There are 3 more things that we need. Number 1, we need a superior, let me see how I can really put it. We need a superior ideology. Because you are dealing with something that enters the hearts of men to instigate war.
You've talked about the superior value system.
Yes.
You've talked about us coming together. You have advised, several CAN presidents.
Yes.
But only recently. I mean, the walk which we saw on Sunday was only about Christians. When we realized that part of the, instrument, part of the weapons that, this hydra-headed monster is employing is also to, exploit our cracks. Do you think that a walk, say with our Muslim counterparts, would have yielded more fruit?
I think we needed to build step by step. So if you would go to step 2 without building step 1, I think you're going to have challenges. Don't forget that just like any religion and like any agency, there's what we call the dynamics. Well, some people say the politics within the authorities of religion. What the first walk has done is this. It has helped to consolidate and put everybody in the Christian faith on one page. Secondly, if you notice a lot of the placards, the wisdom behind the placards, let me give you one of the most important ones. Pastor Adeboye's placard, I think it said something like, every soul is important to God. Now, if you read into that, you realize that what the church has done finally is to wake up to the fact that the mosque is under pressure, because the religious cover of the Boko Haram, the Fulani headsmen, the ISWAP, the religious cover is Islam.
Is there a total understanding of the perspective which you put forward within CAN itself?
Yes, and I'll tell you that we're building consensus. Now, let me tell you something. I told you something. I said it's also a war of narratives. So what you're seeing is the fact that the global terror intelligence and its local face is well invested in media as a force multiplier. And why they do that is to try and fragment our unity and destroy it. So when you see some bickering going on between some arms of government here and there, what you're seeing is the fact that there's a strategy of the enemy that is gaining some grounds, but we must defeat it. And I'll tell you why I think we need to be very compassionate about this. I'm not really interested in nitpicking and pointing out fault. Right now, people are dying. So my emphasis is on how we're going to move forward and get things done. First of all, I think the government and the spokesmen have to be more sympathetic to the cause of the church. And I'll tell you something. The trickles of blood started in northern Nigeria. So there are certain parts of the country where the Christians are still under fire as the first line of attack of the enemy. So when you see that in a nation, a video goes viral across the entire world, where the most brutal, terrible beheading of a church leader is made available for the whole world to see, you would expect that the church will be emotional about it. And let me tell you the truth, the church is struggling in leadership with capping its emotions and handling these things with divine wisdom. So you would not blame the church. It's like a mother who loses children. The mother is not going to really want to listen to reason unless, of course, God just helps her to calm down and give value to everybody's life. Okay? Now, on the part of the government, let me tell you what I would have preferred. I would have preferred if we begin to acknowledge truth. Why do I say this? The war of narratives, we are going to lose it if we don't go back to find out why they are able to divide us ever so easily. As far back up to the 1930s, the white missionaries who were Christians were banned from entering northern Nigeria to preach the gospel. And this was done with the collaboration of the colonial leaders. So there came a sense of entitlement. And if you go into the archives, you're going to find out that there were large areas where the Maguzawas and a lot of people who are not really Muslims were in northern Nigeria. But that stranglehold, the divide and rule, ruling through the emirs, allowed Islam to have an advantage it enjoyed. Unlike any religion, it would enjoy that advantage. And so they had a very tough stance. 19th of April, the year 1900, Bishop Togwell and his team entered Kano. When you go and listen to the minutes of the exchange between Aliyu, who was then the emir of Kano, and Bishop Togwell, you'll find that there was zero tolerance to the idea of anybody else preaching anything apart from what the British government had sort of sanctioned.
So what has that got to do with what we're currently experiencing?
What I'm saying to you is this, is that we don't understand programming. We are programmed to fight ourselves on the basis of religion. For us to deprogram and reprogram ourselves, we need to go back and see that we are so predictable, and we need to discover that we were programmed then to fight on religious basis.
Well, you have said that we did not have founding fathers. We had liberation fathers.
Yes.
What role did that, because you always talk about the chasms we had, you know, from independence up till now, which we are yet to fill. Yes. What elements will you be looking to re-engineer to fill, I mean, if you want to point out some of the chasms and what the solutions will be?
We are going to have to go back to remember that it's not even a restructure of Nigeria that is imminent. It's a reprogramming. The enmities we have...
What's the difference?
This is the difference. One is external, one is internal. You see, you cannot restructure a mindset. This is the truth. If you ask any psychologist, they'll tell you that children between the 3rd trimester of pregnancy and age 6 learn by what they call a low vibrational frequency, which is almost like hypnosis. They just absorb data. By age 7, that's why you can teach a child 3 languages up to age 6. But by age 7, to learn one new language is very difficult. Let me even put it for you like this. There's a program that makes you a Yoruba person, quote. There's a program that makes you an Igbo man. There's a program that makes you Fulani. There's a program that makes you Hausa. There's a program that makes you Edo. There's a program that makes you Efik. All those programs are stronger than the program that makes you a Nigerian. So nobody should think that we can make Nigerians out of the air. This thing comes out of architectural thought. We need to sit down and design how to produce a Nigerian before a child becomes an Igbo man or becomes a Hausa or a Fulani or Efik. That's the way to go. And that's where this role, this vacuum of founding fathers coming. Give me a few minutes with the National Security Council. I will show them that everybody from Tafawa Balewa to Obafemi Awolowo to Nnamdi Azikiwe, everybody pointed out that they could not lay a proper foundation because of the engineering of the colonials. And in their notes, they actually all put it there that they hope that somebody in the future will be able to do what they could not do. They were liberators, they were not founding fathers.
Now let's look at the international dimension to this. We were put on the list of, an immigration ban by the United States, and it's been attributed to security and information sharing. Now, before now, you did say that, and you said it in this interview, that this international group, these people that have this supremacist ideologies, they are well funded and they have lobbyists. They're able to employ lobbyists. Do you see any other dimension to what has happened to Nigeria with this immigration ban, or is it just what they say it is?
Well, I can tell you that it is absolutely true that the global terror organization has its own lobbies in everywhere where it matters, including the American government in the corridors of power. Of course, they'll be disguised under different names. Now, I think Nigeria's greatest challenge is that we rely only on the federal government organs. We should have our own lobbyists too, in places where it matters. So what has happened to us is that we have not stepped across the digital divide to realize that, number one, terrorism defines differently for nations. Every nation has its own list of terrorists that are not all, in consonance. Nigeria has to have a sharper definition of terrorism, first of all. Secondly, we need to put our thinking ahead. I said we must always be 12 steps ahead. The reason why Nigeria is being, one of the reasons why Nigeria right now, more restrictions are going to be put on us, is the fact that every nation is out to protect its own territories. And watching what is going on in Nigeria and watching the fact that we have not put a lot of measures into place to track people, to trace people, to be able to biometrics, to be able to foretell, to be able to concatenate and all that, and bring our lots to the global front to protect their own nations. Once they see that you're getting to a particular point, which is where Nigeria is getting to. And again, what is so sad is that it may work for an advantage for us. The terrorists are very careless in Nigeria. Life doesn't have value. But they forget there's a global stage watching us. That's why we are where we are at.
In-house, though, we've seen some solutions, even though I will not be certain if we're just tackling the symptoms or whether we're actually, addressing the root cause of the matter. We've seen some attempts to try and, address the matter in-house. The federal government has been talking about community policing. They want to fund and, set up community policing outfits at the local levels. In the Southwest, we've seen concerted efforts by the Southwest governors to come up with an outfit called Amotekun, and that has created its own controversy. Just a few days ago, in the north of the country, a group or a body of groups came up with an outfit called Shege Kafasa. We do not know, if that is being supported by northern governors. So what are you seeing? So the solutions that we're coming up with in piecemeal, however they might be, do you see them as the solution to the crisis?
Let's put it like this, rather. I think the federal government of Nigeria has enough leadership potentials to handle this thing. However, there's some abdication going on at that level. I need to say clearly, from the CAN position, there are many mixed signals coming from the federal government in the way it's handling terror. 1 minute, it's handling it properly and doing things right. Second minute, it is pandering to the whims and the caprices of the global terror axis by giving them a lot more latitude within the Nigerian situation. So what I'm trying to point out to you is that...
How does it do that?
Well, look at what you said. In the Southwest, Amotekun came to be as a reaction. It came to be as a reaction because there's a degree of sophistication in the Omoluabi ethos of the Southwest that gives value to life. And at one point in time when the security slipped to an all-time low, where people began to be slaughtered and murdered anyhow, the cultural nation arose and said, thus far and no more. But because the governors had savvy and they were wise, they were able to cap it and made it a government effort and helped to granulate it to find a policy before bringing up the Amotekun. Now, ordinarily, let me tell you the truth, this template should be coming from the federal government. In 2018, I gave an interview on Channels TV when I said regional defense structures was the way to go right now. It was too late for federal defense structures. Why? Let's look at the war of values. What value system does Nigeria have that rates the value of the life of a citizen in a believable way that anybody will lay his life down voluntarily? Now, what hasn't worked on the federal level still works on the regional level. And if the plan had come from the federal government, we would have created a template for all regions. And we had fixed that template in such a way that they would work hand in hand and cooperate and achieve what we could not achieve at the federal level because of the antecedents of where we're coming from as a nation. Now, unfortunately, what did you call that new one that is just coming out again? Shege Kafasa. If I interpret it properly, it's a very derisive phrase, as it were, that says something like, more like the bumbling idiot has been put to flight, has been driven out of the picture, or shut up your mouth or get away, or something like that. Now, if you ask me, if you put diplomats to work, and we have them in Nigeria, if at the federal level, this plan had come from the federal level, it wouldn't have a caption like that. That caption hardly reflects the seriousness of what is on ground. That caption is a response or a reaction, an emotive reaction from a people in one axis. Secondly, in this...
maybe a group, maybe not a people.
No, some groups, just some splinter groups coming together to seize the initiative from the governors and from the federal government. And that has come again because of the splinters. At the third stage of terror, you entertain suggestions and negotiations that you would never have entertained at the first stage. And that's where Nigeria is. Our people are traumatized. Our people are terrorized. So certain groups like the MACBAN are talking in such an irresponsible manner. They're talking in such an uncouth way that nobody...
There are two factions of MACBAN, and I think it's worth mentioning.
Yes.
I mean, there's the MACBAN.
Yes.
And there's MACBAN Kautahori, which
engineering. It's all engineering.
Which seems to be the one that a lot of people have, a lot of quarrel
I said
with.
Terror has its own media voices as well. While they may not necessarily be the terrorists, but terror funding behind them. But you see, these groups that you're talking about shouldn't be the ones in the front line of this template. This template should be coming out of the National Security Council. And they should now call in the governors and explain that, look, we're integrating the nation. And what we're here to do is to give value to the life of every citizen using the regional structure, cultural nations within, towards building it up together so that Nigeria will be stronger by the time we come out of this. So that we'll all have a common enemy. So right now, with this reaction that is coming up, if the governors don't take that initiative, cleanse it, give it some more dignity, give it some more structure and form, it will run away again. And already some people have tried to make it Christian versus Muslim war, emotionally, which is what the designers intended. Okay, we're battling that. But don't forget, it's going to become a cultural nation war.
North versus
North-South. And the divides are already there. So they're just going to exploit again, opportunistic, like I said. And they're going to do it successfully if the federal government doesn't seize the initiative and be 10 steps ahead of terror thinking.
So far, so good. Do you have any cause to hope? Does anything give you optimism on the horizon?
I still have a good degree of optimism, and I'll tell you why I say so. A lot of the solutions we need the digital divide. We need the savvy of the younger generation, the digital processing speed and amplitude that they have to solve a lot of these problems. Technology that is way ahead of anything that we're thinking of right now. On the other hand, there's an analog portion to this. These are problems created way back that nobody ever resolved. Now, the way I'm watching the pressure going on, sooner or later, there's going to be so much pressure on the federal government that they're going to have to open up and embrace their polity and also breach the gap between the digital generation and the analog generation in a non-political way. It's going to come to that soon. Now, if they want to demonstrate to Nigeria, to us, that they are excellent, they have excellent leadership skills, we shouldn't wait for the next tranche of violence. Because each time Nigeria responds, global intelligentsia of terror goes back to the drawing board and hits Nigeria again. Now, if our federal government wants to demonstrate true leadership to us at a time like this, we would expect them to be 12 steps ahead by thinking forward. And one of the steps they can take is to bring the statesmen in Nigeria, with the president inclusive, And frankly speaking, we need to forge out of that group the real people who will be the founding fathers of the new Nigeria, so that the younger generation can build on it.
Well, Reverend Ladi Thompson, thank you for coming on Hard Copy tonight.
Pleasure has been mine.
That's where we draw the curtains tonight. But as always, we want to hear from you. Do write to us using the handles on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.